In chapter 31, in verse 4, he says, Job is talking. He says, does he not see my ways and count my every step? God knows if we stretch the truth. God knows if we left the detail out. Maybe nobody else does, but he does. And he sees things that nobody else sees. You know, when Ananias kept the spoils of after the battle, nobody knew it but God. But it cost Ananias and his wife their lives. Because God held them accountable for it. Something to think about. I'm going to say this again. Don't y'all think I'm judging you. I want you to look at how God is seeing you. How he's seeing you. Each and every day. It's a scary thought. Because, you know, I think about that, and I have to ask him to forgive me for things I think about. I've kind of got to the point I control my mouth more than I used to. But my thoughts are still there. And I have to ask him to forgive me for things that I think about that I shouldn't think about. And then we can go on to judging. Matthew talks about it in chapter 7. He says, judge not that you be not judged. And how easy is it to judge someone? I can be driving down the road and I'll look and I'll say, why in the world would somebody want to do something like that? Well, what did I just do? I just got through judging that person. Don't know who it is, don't know why they did it, but I just got through judging them. And that little still small voice is getting more and more prominent in my life, and I'm thankful for it. And I hear it, Mike, what difference does it make? And I said, Lord, please forgive me. I shouldn't judge that person. But we do it all the time. If we see someone that's dressed different than the way we think we ought to see them. I know people have tattoos, and I just think, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But to cover your body completely in tattoos, that's just kind of doesn't sit well with me. But that's being judgmental. I mean, it's their body. I shouldn't care. If they've got money to blow to spend to do that, that's, so be it. Then they can spend the money to get it off if they really want to get rid of it. But we judge all the time about everything. Everything. And he goes on and says in Matthew 7, he says that the measure that we use is the measure he's going to judge us by. Is that the way we want to be judged? By the way we're judging other people? Is that the way we want to be judged? He goes on in that verse, he says, it's so easy for us to see what everybody else is doing wrong. And he goes back to that first word up there, me. It's so easy to see everything else that everybody else is doing. It says, why can't we see the plank in our own eye? But we can see that tiny, tiny, tiny speck of sawdust that's in our husband or wife's eye, our friend's eyes, our neighbor's eyes. We just judge them. And we need to ask God for forgiveness of that, because we're not supposed to judge. But it's so easy to do. So easy to do. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is forgiveness. People do stuff to us all the time. In the world today, when I was going to school, if you got mad at somebody, you got in a fight, and it was a fist fight, and somebody got their nose busted or whatever. But It wasn't a gun pulled and some 2 or 3 people shot and killed, that type of thing, or you blow somebody's store up because you didn't agree with what they did. The world we live in today is a lot different than it used to be. But you know, we got to learn to forgive people. Things that happened in the past are in the past. My grandmother used to say she worried about everything, and she did. And I asked her one, I said, Grandmother, what good does it do? Do you change anything by worrying about it? Well, what good does it do for us to hold a grudge against somebody? To not let it go? I mean, most of the time we're hurting ourselves because we dwell on it, we think about it, and we're not changing it. If we want to change it, then we need to go to that person that we've done wrong. And we need to make it right. We need to make it right. We need to read that part in chapter 6 of Matthew, where the disciples asked the Lord how they should pray. And he said, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Did y'all get that? Forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And if we can't forgive, if we can't forget the things in the past, and he goes on to say, that God's not going to forgive us. He goes on to say that he doesn't hear our prayers because there's a wall between me and him. We have to make it right. And there's so many of us. And like I said, Mike Christopher's not judging anybody sitting in this room. I don't want you to think that. But we need to make it right with that person and with God. And he says in verse 6 of chapter 31 of Job, he says, let God weigh me in honest scales, and he will know that I am blameless. In verse 14 he says, what will I do? This is Job 31, verse 14. And I'm reading from my study Bible. He says, what will I do when God confronts me? Because God's going to confront us. We're going to all stand in front of him one day. Each and every person that's ever been born is going to stand before him. And I don't have to account for anything that anybody in here has done. The only thing I have to account for is what I've done. And he says, what will I answer when called to account for my life? We've all done things that are wrong. We've all done things that are wrong. But we need to make it right. And it's about integrity. And the book of Job is, we all know the story, where Satan was allowed to take everything except his life. He took all his possessions, his children, everything. He was afflicted with all kinds of diseases, the skin disease, everything. I don't know how well I'd have stood up in front of that, all of that. I thank the Lord every day that I'm healthy and that I haven't had to go through the trials that a lot of people have had to go through. But I know he'd be there for us. You know, and he never left Job. He never forsook him. But his friends came. His wife said, curse God and die. And his friends came. and accused him of all of these different things. But Job stood strong. And in verse 27, chapter 27, it says in Job, and I'm going to end with this, it says, and Job continued his discourse, as surely as God lives, who has denied me justice, the Almighty who has made me taste bitterness of soul, as long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils. I don't know if I could have done this after all the way he went through. In verse 4 he says, my lips will not speak wickedness, and my tongue will utter no deceit. I will never admit that you were in the right, talking about his friends and his wife, the people that were accusing him. Till I die, I will not deny my integrity. I will maintain my righteousness and never let go of it. And listen to this last part. That still small voice inside of us. My conscience will not reproach me as long as I live. I hope that something I've said will help each and every one of us to look at our lives a little bit harder in the coming week. Because there's things that each and every one of us need to talk to God about, take care of, change, fix, whatever it is we need to do. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Let's go to the Lord in prayer.